So today is that most auspicious occasion of Shri Aksaya Trtiya. Akshaya means that which is imperishable, infallible, or which never diminishes. Kshay means that which is, you could say, like the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, this decay or disarray. But Akshaya means that's the opposite principle, the principle of imperishability, or the principle of infallibility, which is, you could say, it's the principle of the infinite supreme being himself. So Akshaya, you could say it is like another word for what is ultimate satta, the ultimate transcendental existence. So in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a beautiful verse that Krishna says, Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, ubayor api drishtoantas tvanios tattvadarshibhi. Those who are wise know how to discern between what is infallible and what is fallible, what is sat, eternal, and what is asat, or temporary. So Akshaya Trtiya, it is the day of the infallible. So it's actually described by Gurudev and the Vaishnavas that whatever you start on this day, that activity will have a Akshaya fruit. Its result will be imperishable, impenetrable, everlasting. So especially on this day, it's an auspicious day to perform the commencement of any activity, especially if you're doing something that is going to be ultimately for the pleasure of that Satchidananda Param Tattva, something done for the pleasure of the absolute truth, which is in alignment with that thing that is Akshay. Because it's also said, like Prabhupada says, that, for example, whatever your performance of this day is, it sets a routine for the whole year until the next Akshay Tritiya. So if you live your day in a very kind of degraded, sinful way, it puts you in a bad groove for the next year. So Akshay, generally, what we can understand it is, it's a way for us to... Sorry, guys. It's a way for us to try to reset our lives in a positive spiritual direction. So also on Akshaya Tritiya, people will perform, they will start investments. It said, especially on this day, people think, okay, you start an investment on this day, it will multiply nicely. Especially things like buying gold. So this is, if we're using these things in materialistic activities, then ultimately it's not going to be beneficial for our spiritual life. But if we're using them in spiritual ways, then we can also, generally we see acharyas like to start things on this date. So for example, our Param Gurudev, he started the Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti, which is his organization, on this day of Akshaya Tritiya, with 4 members, of one Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Param Gurudev, Sajan Sevak, and then one of his dear godbrothers also. So, very auspicious day to start things. So also I want to start something interesting. All of us, you can take a chance to think of it as like it's a great day to start. We're going to start with Srivas Prabhu. We're going to start laying out our... we've been working on Srila Gurudev documentary for a couple months now, but a month and a half or so like that. We've been thinking about it for longer, but we're going to start laying the photos and images or video clips into an actual timeline. So it's a kind of way of initiating the actual event. It's a great day of initiation, great day of commencing activities. So Gurudev in Mathura, Gurudev would speak on Akshaya Tritiya every year. In Mathura in 1961, he gave a very interesting lecture. Actually, it was a public speech. So he was invited to a place called the Maharashtra Mandal, which is a society of devotees basically. And they invited Gurudev to give his speech, and he actually gave a very interesting and illuminating speech, which showed kind of Gurudev's passion. Especially when Gurudev was younger, you saw a lot of fiery passion in Gurudev as far as his preaching a vision. So on this day, when he was invited to speak, Gurudev talked about in general what is Akshaya Tritiya and some of the histories of that day. But his core thesis of the talk was about spiritual revolution. He said, today is the day for spiritual revolution. And he said we should take a vow on this day to use whatever energies we have in the service of the Lord to eradicate the so-called advanced materialistic society, which is ultimately causing disturbance or pain or suffering to the jivas. Rather than, he said that the ancient sages, the Arya Rishis, they intentionally kept a goad holding back so-called material progress, which he described to be like a mad elephant. Because when you only focus on material progress, you tend to ignore the advancement of the soul. He said our ancient sages, they focused on higher thinking and simple living. Now, it's not that we can't have any kind of technological advancement in society, but Gurudev just mentions that we shouldn't think that these things are something that's revolutionary or new now. He said that actually the ancient seers, they could do even more amazing technological achievements than what we see now. Gurudev mentions that millions of years before, the things that were present in the world were more wondrous than we have now even. He said now it's more gross, it's on the gross level. Before it was more on the subtle level, like the subtle weaponry, the brahmastras they would perform, much superior than things like nuclear weapons, but it was all in the subtle realm. So for example, the sages, they had all these powers, but yet they maintained a more holistic, simple civilization. Even you see like the Vedic times, they're not so much attached to the body. He says now the scientist thinks that we are this body, and so they try to arrange so that we can enjoy as much as possible with the body, not realizing that the soul is what is embodying the body, but it's a finite part of that supreme infinite consciousness. And so we should really engage our energies in that service of the supreme consciousness and being aligned with that. Otherwise, the materialistic society says it's ultimately run by personalities like Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and he mentions all these different demonic characters who were very advanced. Meghanad, he said they could fly between planets through astral projections, and through that they were conquering the whole universe. But ultimately, they only caused pain to others. So Gurudev says on this day, so-called material society should be challenged. It's not that we have to raise up swords and guns and go and fight, Gurudev said now it's a time for spiritual revolution. So we have to think, what is a spiritual revolution? It's not necessarily, it's not based on conquest of the sword like you see in past ages. Gurudev said that we see, how did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu start his revolution? Mahaprabhu did not lift any weapon. And there's a pastime of Mahaprabhu that shows this, the Jagai Madai pastime. Mahaprabhu revealed this just to show us that in this age, Mahaprabhu's method is not through the conquest by the sword. Because when he was trying to punish Jagai Madai, he invoked the Sudarshan Chakra and was about to kill them. But Guru Tattva Nityananda stopped him and said, "Oh Lord, in this incarnation you have vowed not to raise any weapon." Many incarnations, Prabhupada likes to say, many incarnations have come and unable to change the jivas, they just kill the demons. And then they start over. But he said, no, their natures doesn't change. They may go to Mahakal Puram or they may get some kind of impersonal liberation, but they will not develop bhakti. So Gurudev actually mentions on Gaur Purnima that Mahaprabhu, he is the incarnation who gave bhakti to everyone, whereas in other incarnations does not even give this. So our spiritual revolution is one of bhakti yoga. It's not something that we need to think about some kind of conquest. But at the same time, bhakti yoga doesn't mean it's something done by weaklings or without courage and strength. Gurudev would say in Australia, you should not be like kittens and mice. You should be bold like lions. He said, I am the son of a lion and I am a lion. And therefore you are my disciples, my children, you should also be like lions. Don't be timid. For Guru, we are always humble. And Gurudev says that the best example of humility is Hanuman. And what did Hanuman do? For the service of Lord Ram, he jumped over the ocean very courageously and he burned down all of Lanka and he smashed the pride of Ravan. And Gurudev said, this is true humility. But in front of Ram, he was always very sweet and humble. When later Hanuman was kicked out of the service of Ram in Ayodhya, he did not fight with Lakshman, Sita, Bharat, Shatrugna. They said, oh, we don't have a place for a monkey in the kingdom. When he was young, Dasarath also kicked out Hanuman when he came to serve and please Lord Ram. So Hanuman never fought with Ram's brothers and his wife, Sita. Instead, he humbly was outside chanting Ram, Ram, Ram. And by the power of his bhakti, then he won over the heart of Ram and he again got that service. There's the story how he was snapping his fingers and chanting Ram, 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 Ram. So Gurudev would teach us that we should be very courageous in our practice of spreading this bhakti yoga, dharma. Gurudev would say you should be fearless. And when there was like an obstacle in distributing this bhakti yoga, then Gurudev would say at that time, bhakti will immediately be like an over-flooding, like a breaking through any kind of dam or any obstacle. The flow of bhakti yoga will overpower any kind of obstacle as long as you're aligned to that Satchidananda Tattva. So that's why this verse is very important. Nasato vidyate bhavo. If we align ourselves to that transcendental substance, then we become empowered by that current of Shakti. So Prabhupada says many times, how do we become empowered in Guru Seva? You connect yourself to the powerhouse. If you're connected to the powerhouse, then you have an infinite supply of power. We ourselves alone, like the iron in fire. If the iron's outside fire, has no quality of fire. But if we place ourselves in that fire through Guru Seva, surrendering to Guru, offering that sacrificial firewood, then creating that sacrifice, entering that sacrifice, then we can become Chidanandamoy, then we can serve Gurudev in this mission. That's why we must, on this day, take real Diksha. Real Diksha means entering into the process of Divya Gyan, transcendental knowledge, and shedding all our layers of pap, all our sinful and anartha-driven mentalities. Give up all of that, Diksha. Shah means to burn off. So this is also a day of burning off all the deadwood of all our kind of materialistic ideas, and then receiving Divya Gyan, transcendental knowledge. Then with that transcendental knowledge, Krishna says, Se deha karitar chidanandamoy. At that time, I make the devotee's body just as Satchidanandamoy as my own. So when we get real Diksha, our own body becomes spiritualized, subliminated, transcendentalized. And at that time, like we were talking about the Pancha Kosh, they also become spiritualized. And that time, the Vaishnava's body is aprakritatvam, transcendental. So especially on Aksaya Trtiya, this is the day for spiritual pursuits and spiritual revolution. So anything you start on this day, that can be successful. So on one point about this kind of bhakti yoga revolution, as Gurudev would say, is we were talking at breakfast with some devotees, and Gurudev gave this instruction many years, that every year try to bring at least one new devotee. I remember in Badger, he would say every year at least distribute 12 books and Gurudev would say sometimes try to bring 12 new people to Kartik. Gurudev would say, preach like that. Whenever Gurudev would, I was typing lectures from South India and other places, and whenever anyone would come to Gurudev saying, how can I serve you? He would say, you should join my mission, you should preach fearlessly. So he was always very powerful like that. And we did a calculation this morning that if every person, like when Gurudev gave this, Gurudev said once in Govardhan, 2005, there was about 1,000 people in the assembly. So Gurudev said, if every person next year should bring one new person, and each of those people who come should be taught to bring one new person. And so we did a calculation. If there's 1,000 people, and every year each of those 1,000 people brings one new person, and teaches each of those people to bring one new person, within 23 years, the whole world will be brought to Srila Gurudev. The calculation goes 8.4 billion within 23 years. So all it takes is a little bit of effort. How hard is it to bring one person? That's all it takes. But the problem is we see a lot of lack of initiative and lack of enthusiasm. So Gurudev would say, don't be hopeless. And you should not think if we think I'm bringing someone to myself, how will I maintain and take care of them? That's why we'll not be able to do it. We think, no, I'm bringing them to the lotus feet of Srimati Radhika and her Guru Jan, the Guru Varga. You imagine just how many disciples does Gurudev have who are like fired up? Each of them, if they just bring one new Atma to the shelter of Srila Gurudev and his movement, then within only a couple decades, the whole world becomes Krishna conscious. That's why Prabhupada would say you should make at least 1% of the society Krishna conscious. It's about, we actually made a system with our kind of Bhakta Bandhav, Bhakti Fellowship, that's designed about how to spread this kind of preaching movement based on these principles Gurudev gave, and based on the principles Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave in his article, The Society of Sri Gauranga, and his book, Godrum Kalpatavi, how to spread the desire tree of the holy name through the Nam Hata, the marketplace of the holy name. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives many different positions, how you can be in these different divisions, what are the departments, and he gives a very organized structure. So that's one thing that's important for us in this society of devotees. We have to think, if we have this mentality of I am serving the society, serving Gurudev, then it's a sense of there has to be some kind of sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, we have to give up some of our own petty differences, work together, harmonize under guidance of true Vaishnavas, and then we can advance. So it's a very inspiring thing, if it's a very simple thing. Gurudev said, distribute my books. Don't be afraid. And we have a system, how you can actually go and distribute books, how you can encourage new people. We should have a system for all those things. Just as ISKCON is very nicely preaching, in Gurudev Society we should also preach. And it's not so difficult, and we shouldn't think, oh, Gurudev didn't want this. Whenever Gurudev would be with devotees in the West, he would inspire them and encourage them to preach. And when anyone would come to him, he would say, you should go and preach. And it's a very simple thing. Mahaprabhu said, how to preach, what should we do? Mahaprabhu said, Gare gare jao mange bhiksha, bolo Krishna, bhaja Krishna, koro Krishna shiksha. Go house to house and beg everyone with straw in between your teeth. Oh, you should chant Krishna, bolo Krishna, bhaja Krishna, worship Shri Krishna, koro Krishna shiksha, learn the teachings of Shri Krishna. Very simple, 3 things. Bolo Krishna, bhaja Krishna, koro Krishna shiksha. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, Jive doya Krishna nam sarva dharma sar. The essence of all dharma is to give compassion to the jivas by spreading Krishna nam. That's the essence of all dharma. So in this way we can pray to Srila Gurudev and we can try to do our level best in serving this, especially on this day. On this day of Aksaya Trtiya, we can start these activities. And very simply, just try to spread it to someone you know. You have your own circle of influence. Oh, you should also chant Krishna Nam. Oh, this is very beneficial for you. One time Nityananda was preaching and he was going through a Yavana area, Muslims, and they're very opposed to chanting Krishna Nam. So he went to someone's door and knocked. The person opened the door. He said, chant Krishna Nam. They said, no, I'm not a Hindu. I'm not going to chant this. He said, no, chant Krishna Nam. He said, no, I won't chant. Chant Krishna Nam. I won't chant. Nityananda was so persistent. Again and again he said, chant. And the person said, tomorrow I will chant Krishna Nam. And one time he said Krishna, and Nityananda Prabhu began dancing and actually saying, no, today you have already chanted Krishna Nam. And Nityananda Prabhu said, now I give you prem. And this person also began to dance in ecstasy. So that's why it said, Marke prem de, emon dayal tu naire. There's no one so merciful as Shri Gaur Nityananda Prabhu. Even if you beat them, they still give prem. But all you have to do is distribute and spread this Krishna Nam. That's why Yuga Dharma Nam Sankirtan. And it said, Vina Shakti Nahitar Krishna Parvartana. Without Krishna's Shakti, you cannot spread this Krishna Dharma. So therefore, we have to take shelter of Gurupad Padma in the line of our Gaudiya Guru Varga, which is ultimately, they're all under the shelter of Srimati Radhika, Shakti, and therefore they have this powerhouse of divine energy by which they can spread this Bhakti Dharma. So we are going to make, we're going to have, we actually have started it already, but we're going to have a group on Facebook and also on our website where you can join up. But it's going to be for those people who actually want to be engaged and want to be involved in like bhakti cells or units through which the purpose is specifically how to increase the Yuga Dharma or the Sanatan Dharma. So if you want to be part of that, it's important. Everyone's going to actually have to contribute in some way through any kind of energy. You can donate to it or locally, prasad charity, book distribution, or your own energies and whatever your talents are. You can dovetail that in Krishna's service. Just like at the time of Swami Prabhupada, everyone came into this movement and donated their energies. And in that way, they very quickly spread within a few, that you can practically see how numbers work like that. The compound interest, if only a few people, how many people went to England to start ISKCON in England? 2-3 Grahasta families. And how big was the preaching there within only a few years? How many families were starting it in the US? How many devotees? 10, 11 people came to Prabhupada. And then quickly it spread everywhere. So this, ultimately it's the power of the Guru, Pad Padma, but if we're under his shelter and praying to be engaged in his service, then very quickly we can do everything. That's why Prabhuji also says, I don't want the books stored up in the shelves. Go and distribute the books. Why are they sitting? I don't want books stored. Everything should go out, and everyone should be engaged in this way. So Gurudev in this way exhorted everyone that you should do your utmost best to try to save this godless society. Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada would say, if you are able to save one soul from the prison of Maya, then that humanitarian act is more great than opening countless hospitals and feeding countless poor people. He said, because by feeding or helping them materially, you're not saving them from the cycle of birth and death, which they're ultimately suffering in. But if you're able to liberate even one soul, that charitable act is greater than any other kind of philanthropic activity. So today we pray to Srila Prabhupada and our Srila Gurudev and our Guru Varga that we can serve somehow in even a small way in this movement. Jai Ho. In the Ramayana, there's a story of a squirrel who was helping build the bridge. And Hanuman and the big Vanaras, they were bringing so many big boulders and mountains, and they were telling the squirrel, get out of the way. What are you doing, And the squirrel, every time, what it was doing, it was going in the ocean, jumping in, getting wet, then rolling on the sand of the ocean shore, and then going and shaking its body off and putting all the sand on the rocks. And there was a whole clan of squirrels doing this. And so Hanuman, everyone was like, get out of the way, we're dropping big boulders. But Ram saw this, and he was his heart melted seeing the effort of the squirrel. And it's described that he stroked its back, and then we got these 2 white stripes. in the backs of the squirrels. And he said, what are you doing? He said, look, I don't want you to cut your feet on the sharp rocks. Many sharp rocks and boulders are being given, so I'm trying to make it level with sand. And Ram said, Alpa seva bahu korimani. Even a small service is seen by the Lord as very great. So to whatever capacity we have, if we try to serve, then we can definitely achieve a very great Akshaya result. Jai Ho.